Today I'm going to talk about what I've learned from making 250 pages of manga or comic, and I have my notes here to sort of help and guide me as I talk. I know 250 pages is not a lot in terms of like experience or in the grand scheme of things, but it is some level of experience, and I have learned a fair bit from just doing manga with someone. I'm working on a manga with someone on a manga called I Am Terror, or IET for short, and I'm working on it with someone. And I've gotten a bit of experience from working on this entire comic book process on my own with my friend, of course. And we've never worked in the comic book industry. We've done comics for some people here and there. We know that it takes writing a script and then taking it to a penciler and then to an inker and then to a colorist and then to a letterer, right? We know the basic process, but we've never worked in the comic book industry proper. So I'm going to talk about my own experience from just working on my own comic by myself with my friend. So the first thing that I've noted is that it is good to know your stories past and present. So if you are focusing on a single character whenever you're making your comic, you kind of need to do a bit of research. You need to do a bit of groundwork, a bit of the difficult work by knowing your character's past and what is going to be happening in your character's present. And in a lot of cases, it's good to also know your character's future, like where the story is going to end up, so that you can form what is known as a character arc, to know who your character was in the past, who your character is in the present, and who your character will be. It's kind of similar to our own selves as persons, as human beings. Who we were before is not who we are now, and it's not who we are going to be in the future. We're either going to progress or regress. We're either going to get better or we're going to get worse in terms of personality, right? Even our physical appearance is not going to remain the same. The way we look when we're babies is not the way we look in the present, and it's not the way we're going to look when we are a lot more older. So it's good to sort of know your character's past, your character's present, and your character's future. This is something I'm struggling with, but it's something I am working on, and it's something I'm going to get better at. Another thing is to know your character, right, or your major characters. I will suggest, like, if you're just starting out making a comic or making a manga, it is good to sort of know who your character is, know your character's personality. You could even do like the MBTI test or like the personality test if your character is a choleric or phlegmatic, if he's a sanguine or melancholy, or like whatever divisions there are of personalities. It is good to know who your character is, the same way you would know your friend, the same way you would know your parents, the same way you would know your siblings. So I would suggest you kind of like make a list, or like list out like who your character is, the things that what you think would happen. You know how when you are with a friend, you kind of know the kind of reaction you're going to get from that friend if you were to you sort of know the buttons to press to get a particular reaction from that friend. You know what to make him pissed off, you know what will make him happy, you know what will make him smile. The same thing if you were to be in like a relationship with someone, a loved one, or like a family member. So you sort of need to know your character in that similar fashion. And one of the easier ways to do this is to look in terms of like current fiction. Look at what is out there already, the characters you like, the characters you're drawn to, the personalities you're drawn to, and you could sort of like copy that behavior and then add that to your own character. At least for me, that is sort of the things I did. And then fit that character into the story that you're trying to create, and design a plot and themes around that character. The next thing I've learned from making over 250 pages of manga or comic is to develop a character sheet. A character sheet is I'm talking about how your character looks, your character's physical appearance. Like if for me, for instance, I'm doing like a superhero, anti-hero comic, so my character's front view, side view, back view, my character's expression, how they look, how they smile, like whenever different expressions basically. These are all things that you do to understand your character a bit better, to know how they look, so that you can internalize it. When I first started, I didn't do all this until about like the 4th or 5th issue. That was when I probably designed the like proper character sheet. From the beginning, I did design a character sheet. It was absolutely horrible. It didn't look good, but it guided me on my character's costume and how it looks. So it is good to develop a character sheet. And if you're going to add another new character into the story, it is also good to develop a character sheet for that character as well. And it's also good to understand and know that character as well. You need to develop like the things that make up that character, the character's fears, your character's insecurities, your character's goals, your character's quirks, how your character behaves in general. The next thing I've learned is to storyboard before inking and detailing. So now we're moving to the drawing aspect of things. Now there's a story aspect, the writing aspect, and then there is the there's the drawing aspect. I'm not very good at writing stories. It's something I've learned. It's something I'm trying to work on. It's something I'm trying to improve on. But what happened is that I wrote my first comic, like my first comic book page, the first issue. I'm the one that wrote it by myself. But then, of course, someone read it and then gave me feedback. And eventually, I just decided to get his own input. Eventually, he became the writer of the comic, and we're working on it together. We're currently on chapter 7 or issue 7. That's what we're working on. But you sort of need to, but going back to this, you sort of need to understand, you sort of need to design the storyboard before inking and detailing. What this will help you do is that it will help you see the entire story and the direction that the story is going, so that if you need to make any corrections, you can then make it. To be honest, this is something I haven't really perfected or developed the patience to perfect, but it is something I'm working on. But doing this is going to help you, because you can then see where you need to make corrections, or maybe if you need to add a panel to make a story, to make the sequential art a bit more entertaining, or more to help your viewer understand what is going on a bit more. You need to do that rough draft first, no matter how many pages it is. I'm working on the 7th issue now, and I've done a lot of pages, a lot of the storyboard phase, but I'm bored of it because it's extremely boring, and there's about like 40-50 pages in the comic. So what I've decided to do is that I've decided to split it into half. So I've done like 20 pages, and then I began inking some of like the pages from start to finish, so I know where the story is going. I understand the direction, and then I'm happy with where it is, and it's going in line with the script. So what I've decided to do is I've decided to start inking from there. I'll finish a page 1, then move to page 2, and then when I finally reach the like page 25, for instance, then I'm going to like storyboard from that moment downwards. So that's how I've decided to do it, so that I don't get extremely bored. So storyboard before inking and detailing. The next thing to do is that to not get overwhelmed by the work, because this is a lot of work, and we are just two working on it. He's writing the story and I'm doing the rest, the whole art. So to not get overwhelmed, it is good to sort of finish the entire page before you move on to the next page. So like what I've been talking about in terms of like the storyboarding before inking and detailing is that because of how long the storyboarding can take, I mean, it can't take that long. It's just how lazy are you, basically. That's just the truth. How lazy are you? But it takes a lot of time, right? So one thing you can do, so that you don't have to always go back to the different pages to like make adjustments, one thing you can do is that you can finish an entire page. So when you've done the entire storyboarding, right, and then when you're finally ready to add the inks, to add the details, to add the lettering, right, or the narration boxes or speech bubbles, you then go to like the page that you're going to start working on, and then do every single thing in that page before you then move on to the next page. Doing this is going to help you remain sane and not to have to go back, because if you're doing like a 50 page comic book or manga, and then you always have to like go back and restart again, in terms of like you have to restart adding values or restart adding colors. Like I'm not doing colors because colors takes a lot of time, and I just don't have the energy, so I'm just doing it in black and white. If you are having to go back over and over again, you will get exhausted, you will get tired, you will get frustrated, and you will feel like quitting. So one thing you can do is that for you not to get overwhelmed, just finish an entire page before you move on to the next page. Another thing I've learned from making 250 pages of manga is for you not to be afraid to make changes to your story and character. You have set a script, right? You have set a character arc. You have developed an act whenever you're writing a comic book story or a story in general, right? The story and the character moves from point A to point B to point C to point D. There's a climax, and then you move on to the bottom, right? To the final like story, like whatever happens at the end of the story or the final arc. don't be afraid to change it. Don't be afraid to make tweaks. Don't be afraid to make changes. Don't be afraid to make, if you have a new inspiration, don't be afraid to make changes to that character. Because of the fact that you've established a script doesn't mean you should stick to it forever. You can always change it, right? You can always decide to bring in a new character to make the story better, to make a change to your character's personality, to introduce something new. Let's say you watch a movie, you could be inspired by something. It is good to make changes if you feel like it will take the story in the right direction. If you are so stiff and rigid about how your story is going, you always be left to wonder how much better adding that change could make your story. And if you add it, if it doesn't make sense in terms of like actually writing the story, if you add it and it doesn't make sense, fine, but at least you've tried, right? But don't always make your story so rigid. Don't always be so rigid in how there's a place for rigidity. There are certain cores of the story that you have to maintain and you should absolutely stick to, and don't change a lot of things. But little tweaks here and there, if they are necessary, is good to add. So another thing I've learned from making 250 pages of manga or comic is to always ask for help when you're stuck. If I'm relatively new to this industry, and like I told you, when I first wrote my comic and then I put it out there, I posted the link on my WhatsApp and my social media, and a few amount of people read it. My comics is at globalcomics.com, by the way. A few amount of people read it, and I got positive feedback, but I also got constructive criticism from people who are better than me at making comic, and who have worked in this industry for a while. So I took it to heart. Don't always, you're not a paragon of knowledge, you're not a paragon of excellence. No one is, to be honest, but always be willing to humble yourself to listen to someone who has done it, or who is better at a different aspect than you. So there could be someone who is a better writer than you, someone who is a better inker than you, someone who is a better storyboarding artist than you, someone who is a better colorist than you, and they could probably have noticed something in the story. Always be willing to learn, because it's for your own good, right? And if you need help, ask for it. If you know someone who is better or who has done better than you in a particular part of the arts process or the creation process, ask them for help. And if they don't help you, well, you just learn by doing a lot. Learn from the amount of volume and the amount of work that you put out. Eventually you will get better. Another thing I've learned from making 250 pages of manga or comic is that use references. Don't be afraid to steal. Don't be afraid to take inspiration from other stories, right? My comic basically, in terms of aesthetics, is gotten from the fact that I like Wolverine and Batman, and I want my character to look like Wolverine and Batman, or African Wolverine and Batman, and that was the basic inspiration behind it. That was the first thing I thought of initially when I was in secondary school. When I first wrote the character, that character was inspired. I called him Red Terror, and he was inspired by Green Arrow and Hawkeye, right? Green Arrow and Hawkeye, and that was how I drew the character. I even made like a little comic book to show my friends back in school, and of course I changed that character, and eventually I liked Batman and Wolverine a lot more, and then I added that aesthetic to my character, right? That's the basis of the story, right? That's the, like, in terms of aesthetic looks, that's the basis. I took inspiration from that, and then eventually I worked on the story, right? But aesthetically I wanted it to look a certain way, and I, for whatever reason, wired and engineered the story to make that look or aesthetic fit into the story. So take inspiration from different aspects of the story. Let's say you could like Superman's story, for instance, like the fact that he came from another planet. A lot of stories have been inspired by that. If you look at Invincible, if you look at characters like Icon, if you look at characters like what's his name, Ultraman. There's this Marvel character that is basically like Superman, Hyperion. Yeah, so there's a lot of characters, even Sentry. There's a lot of characters that have been inspired from Superman, a lot of characters that have been inspired from Batman, a lot of characters that have been inspired from all these iconic heroes that we read in comic books and we see in movies, right? Don't be afraid to, steal a little bit from there, but, have your original idea. but there's nothing wrong with taking a little bit from here, taking a little bit from there, and fusing it into your story. And at the end of the day, when you're done, people will call your art original. So these are the things that I've learned from making 250 pages of manga. Hope it helped you. It helped me. I've decided to note these things down. Hopefully it can help someone out, and I'll see you in the next video.